Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership at TEPSA. And each week, I look to bring you a different guest who has encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another, and bring them on to have them share some of their story in hopes that it inspires you to share some of yours. I am so excited today to get to talk to Brian Keith Harris. Brian, tell everybody kind of who you are.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Todd, for allowing me to come on and share my story and for providing a platform for others to do the same. I'm Brian Keith Harris. I am an educator, an author, a minister, a dancer, and currently I am a school administrator in the Washington, D.C. area at an all boys tuition free school, the Bishop Walker School for Boys. I am also the founder and artistic director of Sons of Freedom Dance Institute and an organization called Cultivating Young Kings, and the author of Freedom's Design 20 Days of Empowering Black Kings. And just really happy to be on today.
So we got a lot to talk about, Brian, because I have
Yes.
so many questions about all these avenues and interests and things that you do that I'm so intrigued by. So,
Yes.
first I want to kind of start with your own path as a child. So, when you were a kid, what did you dream of becoming? Like, what did you think was going to be in your path?
Yeah, it's so funny you asked that, Todd, because um, all of the things that I dreamed of becoming as a kid, I have had the opportunity to
Oh,
do as an adult. And we don't oftentimes hear that, right? Like
yeah.
some kids are like, I want to be a firefighter, a police officer, and they wind up being like a doctor or a teacher, right? Um, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a dancer and I wanted to be a preacher. Those were the things that I just wanted to do. I come from a family of ministers and a family of artists, and I just kind of followed in their footsteps. The arts were always around me.
Yeah.
Preaching and spirituality and faith was always around me as well. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of what I gravitated to as a child. And so, as a child, very fond memories of me pretending as if I were a preacher and lining up my teddy bears and, having a brush and, preaching to them. And then just dancing all over the house, dancing down the aisles of the grocery store. And so, when I was a kid, that's what I wanted to become.
And I want to dive into the dancing thing. So you mentioned at the top of the show that you've got your own kind of, you're the founder, you're the artistic director for Sons of Freedom Dance. So tell me more about that. Like, how did that begin and where'd you get the name and what do you do with that?
Absolutely. So, Sons of Freedom Dance Institute is an organization that nurtures character development, increases social awareness for boys through classical and contemporary styles of dance and movement. I started the company at this point 13 years ago.
Wow.
And my first group of young men who are 8 years old all went to college last year.
Wow.
And so that was an awesome moment to kind of see their journey, see their trajectory,
Yeah.
and see how Sons of Freedom, in a real sense, helped to prepare them for careers, as dancers, but then also for life.
Yeah.
And so I started Sons of Freedom because I wanted to provide a platform for boys just like myself
Yeah.
who love to dance, but oftentimes did not see themselves reflected in dance classes, in the area. And so I wanted to provide, a place where boys can come.
Yeah.
They feel free to express themselves and they also feel comfortable being, in the presence of other young men.
Right.
And so that really was the basis for me starting Sons of Freedom. The name for Sons of Freedom came about, in a very powerful and kind of casual way.
Yeah.
I had a parent of one of the students that I taught, and she and I actually became really close friends. But she would come every morning. I would kind of stand at the door and welcome the students in. And she would come every morning, and she and I would, have great conversation. And one day I told her, I said, I'm going to start a dance company for boys. I just think that boys need an opportunity to, get the training and be around other young men who love to dance. And I said, I just really want boys to feel free.
Yeah.
And she would talk to me, and probably about 2 weeks later, she came running to me one morning and she said, I have the name for your company. You know, you should call them Sons of Freedom. And
Uh,
that name has evolved. That name has become so powerful, and that name has really become, the basis for my work.
yeah.
Really providing boys an opportunity to be free, free in their expression, free in their exploration,
Yeah.
and free in developing the person that they want to become.
Well, I love this whole idea because, thinking stereotypically, thinking, traditionally, boys aren't often encouraged to join a dance group or join a
Right,
dance class and things like that. And,
right,
and when you can create a safe space that invites that group in, you create a space that more are interested in actually stepping outside and being part of that. So when you started Sons of Dance, did you deal with some of that kind of I'm too nervous to be a part of this, or how am I going to convince boys to join this when traditionally that isn't always something that they're jumping to be a part of, even though they may love that in their own personal lives? So how did you
yeah.
break down those barriers to make this successful?
Absolutely. I think I had some fears. I think the boys had some fears, and I think
Yeah.
that their families had some fears. And then even the community at large,
Yeah.
had some fears. And so in the beginning, it was a lot of me sharing with the boys
Mhm.
that you have an opportunity to do the thing that you love to do around other young men that also love to do that same thing, right? And I had them to kind of think about it as being a part of a football team or a baseball team. You're in the presence of people who love to do the thing that you love to do, right? And once we were able to kind of share that, and they were able to see and develop a sense of brotherhood,
Mhm.
that kind of helped them to shed some of those fears or misgivings that they had about being a part of a dance company. For the families, I had to share the idea that, you do not know how your son being a part of this dance company, how this is going to influence or impact their lives
Right.
in ways that you just will not be able to calculate in this moment.
Yeah.
I remember a vivid, situation where I had a father who was just like, my son is not going to do this.
Mhm.
I am only putting him in this because his mother will not stop talking about it. He won't stop talking about it, but I'm really not, I don't have a positive feeling about this. Um, and maybe a year after his son being in the dance company, Todd, I did a father and son piece. He was the
Uh-huh.
first father to sign up to dance on
Wow.
stage with his son.
Wow.
And he said to me, he actually has passed away maybe about 2 years ago. And before he passed away, he said to me, he said, thank you so much for continuing to push me, even though I was challenging you.
Yeah.
Thank you because my son has,
Yeah.
just blossomed as a person, all because, of the experience that he received in Sons of Freedom. And so I think I was able to break down those barriers by one, um, helping the boys to make some connection to something
Mhm.
that is likened to a dance company,
Right.
helping parents to see the power and impact that being a part of the company could have on their sons. And then just building relationships with those in the community and helping those in the community to see the first performance, Todd.
Mhm.
The community came and the
Yeah.
curtains open. And here are these beautiful young men,
Yeah.
with backward hats,
Yeah.
doing doing a classical ballet piece,
Right, right, right.
and that just sold them. And so we've had major success. We've been able to travel around the country and really help other young men and other families, to break down whatever stigmas or stereotypes that are placed on their particular son, regarding the arts.
Well, I love what you said at the beginning of that about creating a brotherhood because, I think
Yeah,
in popular culture today, there's so many opportunities for kids to see themselves in World of Dance. So you think you can dance, Dancing with the
right,
Stars, like all these things where powerful men are doing all types of dances. And then you look at historically, like college fraternities, there's a lot of dance that happens there too, like especially with step and all kinds of stuff. And so,
right.
what is your personal favorite style of dance for you to do?
Yeah, so I think that my favorite style of dance is West African dance styles.
Ah,
There are so many West African dance styles. I think it's my favorite for multiple reasons. I think
mhm.
there's nothing like the feeling of hearing the drumming,
Uh,
hearing that djembe being played and feeling that in your spirit, feeling that energy come through your soul, it just causes you to want to dance and keep dancing, right? And then I think all of the West African dance styles, knowing their reasoning for developing and why it is that these dances were created and how it is that these dances uplift communities and encourage communities and inspire or even inform communities. I think all of those pieces just make West African dance so electrifying.
yeah.
The other thing that I think, another dance style that I think is important that I love so much, you actually alluded to it, um, is the South African gumboot dance, which is how we now have our idea of stepping. That's kind of where the
Ah,
idea of stepping came from. It came from the South African gumboot dance, and the gumboot workers were forced to wear gumboots because of the conditions in the coal mines.
mm,
And they were actually unable to talk. They were forbidden to talk. And they would go months, weeks without seeing their families. And so the way to communicate with each other was for them to create these really cool and intricate beats with their boots. And
yeah.
that just transcended and evolved to being something that was, so powerful, to being something that is also entertaining. So I just love hearing those intricate beats. So I would say West African dance styles and the South African gumboot dance, which we now know as stepping.
And I love that you bring one of those up because for me personally, like I have no rhythm, I have no interest in dancing, like, but I love watching. Like, I will watch all the dance shows, except Dancing with the Stars. Like, I'm not into some of those people, but I will. I like. I'm obsessed with So You Think You Can Dance and World of
Yeah,
Dance and all that. But West African dance style and Bollywood are always been my two favorites that I've always been drawn to, just because there's so when you do your research about those kind of dance styles, there's so many intricacies
that's
that
right.
are involved that people on the surface who don't look into that dance have no idea of the
That's right.
amount of work that goes into making sure every hand movement is correct so it doesn't
That's
send the
right.
wrong message for that culture or that style. And so that's why I admire your gumption and trying to do this, but more so than just creating a dance group, but creating something for boys, for kids who may not have otherwise been involved. I think that that's incredible. And so did this lead into cultivating young kings, or did that come first? Like, how did that happen?
Awesome question, Ty. Awesome. So yeah, so started Sons of Freedom first, and my goal was really providing a place and a platform for boys who are interested in the arts, specifically
Mhm.
dance, to function and to flourish.
Yeah.
And then throughout my journey, my journey in education, I just started a doctoral program, and so the journey in education, the doctoral program, kind of led me to two new things or new concepts or shifted concepts, if you will. Those concepts being able to teach our young men about the rich history and culture, one, and two, really providing educators, school systems, community leaders, mentoring programs with best practices in working with boys and specifically with boys of color. I
Mhm.
think that oftentimes is a demographic of young men or young people that we don't always have the most innovative approaches. I
Right.
think the world of education and we are now beginning to really develop some very solid and some very impactful ways
Mhm.
of making a difference in the lives of those boys. And so, Cultivating Young Kings is an organization that really supports educators
Mhm.
and community leaders and anyone who works directly with boys. And so, what we do is we host a yearly conference where educators come and we provide, training classes from everything from a school social worker to an English teacher to a literacy coach to a math teacher, and really talking to educators about what the ways in which they can really engage their boys around social emotional development, around academic development, and also around literacy, right? Like, we really want our boys to become avid readers. We know that reading is an opportunity for boys to flourish in a lot of different ways. It has a lot of different benefits that are not just relegated to academic benefits. So I think that's kind of how that trajectory happened, starting with boys in the arts, transitioning to wanting to teach boys more about their culture and heritage so that they develop cultural legacy, and then giving teachers and educators and those who work with boys an opportunity to know and understand some of those best practices in working with boys.
Well, and I think organizations and startups like this are so incredibly important for us to constantly be shining a light on, not because solely they are opportunities for to reach boys, but exactly what you said, boys of color and
Yeah,
boys of traditionally marginalized groups who don't always get the same access or opportunity. And
that's right.
it's so funny because when you start looking for something, you begin to see that there's so many opportunities there. But if you're not looking for it, sometimes you don't even see it. And so, like
Right.
recently, I've heard about like Call Me Mister, and then I've heard about and then yours, and it's like there are so many cool opportunities popping up that I think the more all of us can broadcast and advertise it and shine a light on it, the more normal it becomes to see,
That's
to
right.
encourage others to go start something in your community,
That's
start
right.
something out of your house, like get out there and connect, because every one of our kids, regardless of their gender, their religion, their color, they're going to be running this country for
That's right.
while we're all getting older,
That's right.
and we want them all to have the same opportunities,
That's
all
right.
to understand the same, that we believe in them, that they can be anything. And so the more we can put those powerful role models in their life, the better. And so as you've started these different organizations and been an educator and an author and all these things, what has been something that has really just hit you so deeply that it's been your guiding force of why you continue to do these opportunities?
hmm I think what has hit me so much is the fragmented sense of self that our boys have about themselves, about their identity, about who they are, and about the way in which they function in the world. I think the thing that has hit me so much is the countless and senseless killings of Black and Brown boys,
Right.
and how that negatively impacts our boys, and how they develop a sense of their identity and they frame their identity based upon some of those senseless killings, based upon the stereotypes and stigmas that have been placed on them by society. And that is the thing that continues to shake me to my core. And it's also the thing that motivates me to continue providing an opportunity and a platform, one, for boys to know exactly, or the truth, I say, about their history, for them to recognize that there are people in our history that were resilient, courageous, and that same level of resiliency and courage and bravery that those people in our history possessed, that they also have that too.
Right.
We have to be able to tell those boys, you are special, you are powerful, you are wonderful, you're smart, you can do anything that you want to do, and not allow them to frame their identity based upon
Right.
what they see in the media, based upon what society is placing on them. So I think that's the thing that hits me the hardest, and that's what causes me to continue to work as hard, because we got to make sure that our boys have a foundation. You talked about, our kids, being the leaders of our country, in our world. And the reality is that we can't have leaders of our country and our world who don't know who they are, who don't
Right.
have a strong foundation. So the more we teach our children about who they are, the more we teach about, from where they've come, and the more we show them that they have some amazing attributes, is the more that they will be prepared, to lead the country and to lead the world.
Well, and you said something there that really struck me, is that, with all the things going on that we see on the news, even today, that we are shocked and can't believe are still happening, we have so many of our kids that are watching that and internalizing it, and that
Right.
are looking at the person that was shot, the person that was arrested, the person that was portrayed this or that way, and looking at it as, that person reflects me or my family or my community, and is this the way people look at me? And I think that's why it's so important for all of us to be raising our voices, and all of us to be pouring into our kids to
That's
let
right.
them know that they don't have to be what others view them or what they're portrayed at. And I think that's why people like you who are starting these groups and these organizations and these opportunities, I think that's why it's so important for all of us to come alongside each other and
Yeah.
say, let's blow this up and advertise this and go crazy, because
That's right.
this is pouring goodness into our kids, into our communities, into families. Because I think that's something too, that's what I love about the work you're doing, is you're not just pouring into these boys, you're pouring into their families, you're
Right.
building community within
Right.
the community. And that's where change truly happens, because as our kids begin to internalize these things, the parents have already grown into that and internalized it. And so we're having to break down so many years
That's
of,
right.
of hurt and pain and
That's right.
injustice and all these things. So I applaud you and the work you're doing,
Thank you.
and I want to make sure that for everybody listening or watching, that we all take the opportunity to find examples like what you're doing, and blast it out there so that others can see there is hope. There
That's right.
is there are things happening within pockets all over the country that we can make even more good things come out of it. So Brian, as I close today, there's one question I always love to end on, and I
Yeah.
believe that we hold so many things deep to our hearts and our beliefs and who we are. And so for the people who are listening or watching today, if there was one thing you wanted them to walk away with, what would your one thing be?
If there was one thing that I would want them to walk away with, would be get involved and become invested in the life of a young person today.
Yeah.
Our young people are waiting on you. They are leaning on you. They are looking to you. And the best thing that we can do for our young people is build relationships with them, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a parent, whether you're a community activist. Um, it is important for us to build relationships with our young people so that they can become exactly who they were created to be in life. And so when we get invested, when we share our stories with them, when we are in tune with what they're feeling and what they're experiencing, we then have an opportunity to see them become everything
Yeah.
that they're intended to be.
I love that. Well, Brian, I was so excited to get to chat with you today, and so I appreciate you, your work, your heart, and everything you're doing to pour into kids and adults alike. So thank you for coming on and sharing some of your story today.
Thank you so much, Todd, for having me. It was a wonderful time. Thank you for the work that you're doing.
And thank you, everybody, for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you get your stuff, it's there. I hope today's conversation with Brian has encouraged you to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters.